Welcome back to Aliens Fireteam Elite. In this video I want to go through an article because Kotaku are saying the game is not a great Aliens game, and I agree with them. It's not that the game's dreadful, the game's playable, there are issues, quite a lot of them, you'll notice them the further you get into the game, and the cycle of gameplay is incredibly repetitive, but not only that, it's not even realistically a full game, because throughout the seasons, which are cosmetic seasons, so basically season passes, battle passes, whatever, alongside those there will be free content updates that will include story-based stuff, so the game doesn't have a full story, and some story stuff will be added throughout like future updates. You could be waiting up to a year to finish off the story the developers actually wanted you to complete. So this says that basically whoever's written it has many friends that wish they were in their position, and Aliens is a franchise fundamentally defined by its atmosphere, and Fireteam Elite is built around classes, combat ratings, replayable missions, difficulty modifiers, and oddly a lot of cover. In Ripley's world, the humans are saved by the superiority of their firepower, constantly on edge from the claustrophobic corridors, cleverness and agility of the xenomorphs. But in Fireteam Elite, humans are the aggressors, mowing xenomorph down like cattle. It's a fundamental disconnect between Fireteam Elite and its own franchise, and one of many letdowns. So the game starts you out in an abandoned refinery where you're looking for a scientist trapped on board. He's been overrun, as you would expect, and so you and two other friends or bots, in case of Xbox, it was forced to be bots for the first at least few days. You launch a rescue mission from your nearby hub, and as you travel through you can find pieces of intelligence that trigger NPC conversations with your fellow officers, so basically bits of lore for the game. But for the most part the story is about as necessary as the backstory in, say, Left 4 Dead. They structured the main campaign missions in an almost identical fashion, running players through large, relatively linear levels. Occasionally you'll have a handful of xenomorph runners drop down from the vents or scurry in one of the sides of a vent or something like that. Sometimes you'll find a prowler waiting to pounce around a corner, but sometimes the prowler's AI bugs out, letting you run right up to them without them noticing your presence. For the most part, you'll be fighting off waves of xenomorphs or synths like the Working Joes across the game's four main acts. You'll fight these typically in rooms with lots of cover and plainly obvious choke points. That provides plenty of opportunities and obvious locations for setting up mines, turrets, and the defensive lines necessary to survive. In practice, that means you're generally always dealing with enemies coming towards you. When a Xeno does spawn behind you, Fireteam generally throws out an audio cue, voiceover line, or a notification on your radar. It's a game that always gives a fair fight, at least in your first couple of runs through the campaign. The adventure starts by creating a character. Like, this is basically just getting into the game, talking about your abilities, recharging over time. A lot of the abilities for classes don't actually work. I don't know if they have been fixed or if they're like if the developers are planning to fix them anytime soon, but I've heard a lot of issues have come with the classes in terms of things like there being a trauma station radius perk that does nothing to, like, it doesn't give you bonus radius. And that seems weird because it's a core feature of the game. You progress your character as you play more, unlocking new perks, leveling up your weapons and getting extra stability and stuff for those. And when your perks aren't working, it's like, what's the point? Like, there's basically been no testing done to this game. And all of the stuff, perks, like weapon attachments, all that sort of stuff, it all contributes to a combat rating, and that is, they've got a recommended one for each of the missions that you do. They also have things like challenge cards. You can use them that will just change in rarity. They work similar to the corruption cards in Back 4 Blood if you played that beta. Like, you can get extra credits or rewards for fulfilling like particular requirements. And some of them might actually change the gameplay for the better for some players, because it says here there's one that spawns an invulnerable xenomorph drone which charges and stalks you around the entire level. And then you have some cards in that challenge card system that really ruin it, because it says here, in one session, a mate jokingly played a card that would cause our guns to occasionally jam until manually reloaded. But Fireteam's idea of a gun that occasionally jams is what most people would consider a major defect. Not one of us went longer than 60 seconds without our guns jamming at least once. And on several occasions, every single fight, our guns would jam within 2 or 3 reloads. And then, to carry on with this, it just mentions the game's performance. Some people have struggled with it. I play on Series X, and I've not really noticed a performance dip or anything like that. And then more of it is just talking about, like, you don't really have enemies that spawn behind you too often. They're like mainly where you can see them spawning, like out of vents in front of you. They come along corridors in front of you. There's not too much in terms of like variation of where they spawn. And the game is so predictable, it's unbelievable. But in my opinion, like coming off this article completely, I just think the way they've set up the gameplay is diabolical. I think it's really, really bad because most of the missions, at the end of them, you're like defending against waves of xenomorphs, and they just come at you and come at you a lot of the time until a timer is done. Like you'll get like a 180 seconds or a 3-minute timer you've got to defend, and then you're able to like exit the mission and complete it. I watched gameplay of the very final mission in this game, and there's not one timer, there's not two, there's not three, but there are 4 timers in the end part of that mission. So for the majority of the missions, or at least like the entire first act and the very final mission of the game, there are timers, and it's the same thing for an end of mission objective. And I think that is so lazy, so bare bones uninteresting. There's no variation in the end objectives from what I've played and what I've seen. And it says here, and a lot of people are using Outriders to compare to other games. And I know Outriders been out for about 5 months or something, and it's a very, very bad game in terms of its technical point of view, what the developers are doing to it and things like that. There's a lot of issues and everything. But it even says here in this article, I couldn't help but think of Outriders as I played this, if only because it understood lessons that Fireteam so badly needed. Outriders suffered from crippling launch issues, server problems and constant performance quirks, but is shipped with an interesting enough gameplay loop, one that provided enough interplay with the loot and the character's abilities to justify pushing through all the issues. But then you've got to think, with people having issues, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. You're not going to have one person experience the game exactly the same way as anyone else. And there might be people now on Xbox that are having a good time because they've done something to the matchmaking. But for me, I actually loaded up the game and tried matchmaking, and what it does is, once you enable public matchmaking, you go into the lobby waiting, you get a 1-minute timer for people to join your game, and then the mission will start. It's a mission countdown, and it lasts for a minute. Once that gets to about 20 seconds, if people haven't joined, it fills the spots with bots. My problem is, I sat there and searched a few times for the very first mission, which you would think would be one of the most common, and I did search for a different mission completely, but I did the first 2 difficulties, I think it's casual and standard. I searched for both those difficulties on the first mission, and I didn't find a single player. And that's not because the game's dead, because on Steam, this game's still holding 10,000 concurrent players a week later, which is pretty good numbers, and I'm pretty sure Xbox will be doing the same thing. But for the matchmaking to still not work properly for me, it's incredibly off-putting. And yeah, this might not be a AAA $70 next-gen game, but it's still going to set you back £35. It's like $50 or something like that. And I think it's not acceptable. How can you make an entire game that is only got 4 acts, say 12 missions or something like that? That's your entire game. You're charging £35, but in at least a third of those missions, you have exactly the same end of mission objective. That is not acceptable, even in a game that's costing £10-15. To have a lot of the missions have the same end of mission objective? Nah, I don't agree with it at all. The perk system, the matchmaking, there are so many issues. I've heard about Horde mode. I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I've tried looking into it as much as I can. I've heard NPCs are falling through the ground, and I've also heard, I know for a fact you have to complete the entire campaign to unlock Horde mode, and there is one map in the entire Horde mode. So you go through the whole campaign, you unlock Horde mode. Yeah, you might be able to play it several times and change the way you play because it's based on waves and stuff. But to have one map at launch, I don't think that's acceptable either. But what we're going to do is leave the video there. That's just some opinions and thoughts and stuff on Aliens. I will be playing more of the game. I do want to try this Horde mode for myself, because I've always loved Horde modes. They've stupidly locked it behind completing the entire campaign. But at some point I do hope to be able to complete the whole campaign and be able to, like, at least try the Horde mode and see what it's like for myself. But from what I've heard, stuff I've seen, doing research and all that sort of stuff, it's not great. And like, this game, it doesn't deserve its £35 price tag, even if you're a huge Aliens fan. There's just so much that's, like, set apart from everything else Aliens, like, because you're supposed to have some, like, creepy sort of atmosphere. It's Aliens, you're supposed to be scared, and you're not. There's not any fear factor in this game at all. You just go through an area, oh, you see a vent drop. Like, you see the hatch to a vent just fall on the floor, and oh, there's no fear to it at all. There's no jump scares, nothing like that. It's just a bland shooter, in my opinion. But as I said, I'll be playing more. That's going to do it for the video. I'll see you in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it.